Good evening, everyone. How are you guys doing? What's going on? Welcome to episode 25 of Merchants of Novigrad, a bi-weekly podcast where we discuss everything Gwent. Today with me, my two partners in crime, Hesser Tavern, and for the first time in a while, Ville. And as you guys can see, once again, we have a very special guest, the Skellige faction ambassador and the official tournament caster / analyst, Shinmiri. What's going on, guys?
Hey, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey guys.
Before we get into it, as always, a couple of words to our viewers. Guys, if you have any questions, either for us or our guest, you can ask them in chat. Because as usual, Hesser has been charged with the task of collecting the more interesting ones, and we're gonna try to answer them as we go. Also, if you wanna stay in touch off stream, you can follow us on Twitter at Novigrad Podcast. And if you'd rather watch this episode later, it's going to be uploaded onto a variety of platforms, including YouTube and Spotify, either tomorrow or Sunday. And with that being said, let's start with the very first segment of our show. What have you been up to? A very simple, lighthearted question. Guys, what have you been up to? What have you been doing as of late?
Should I go first?
Yeah, let's start with our guest. Shimiri, go first.
It's been the holiday season. We usually travel during the holiday. By we, I mean me and my wife. But obviously this year with COVID, we haven't been doing that. We've just been staying home. But we have been taking time to enjoy nature. Usually once a week, we will go out and go to a park or go to a waterfall hike or something, and just take some time outside and sit while staying safe. So that's nice. And then when it comes to gaming, we've been playing some online board games with friends, which is fun. And then I've been playing a lot of Gwent. I've been streaming Gwent. I actually have a pretty nice MMR score this season. And yeah, I actually also plan on doing a variety game on stream as well. We just had a vote the other day, and Dark Souls 3 won as the next game that I'm going to be playing on stream. Usually it'll be probably a few hours of Gwent and then a few hours of Dark Souls 3. So I'm looking forward to it.
That's interesting because I have a hard time imagining you playing a game like that. It's, a very fast-paced combat.
I know a lot of people say that. A lot of people say it's unbelievable. But I've done quite a few. I've played Hollow Knight. I played Sekiro, both really difficult real-time games, and had a lot of fun with those. I'm actually not to toot my own horn, I feel like I'm a pretty good gamer when it comes to all different sorts of games, not just slow strategic games in which you can rope. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
We actually have a question about that later in the episode. But what about you guys, Hesser and Ville? What have you been doing?
Oh, I was pretty much doing the same stuff, just like Shinmiri. We were enjoying the holidays with my wife. Traveling is unfortunately banned in Europe, so we moved to Warsaw for a while, just to check out the illumination in that city because it was pretty glorious, from what we've heard before. And yeah, we've been playing some single player games as well. Had a little break from card games or any other multiplayer games. So I've been enjoying some Cyberpunk, Death Stranding, because that was on my pile of shame. So I had to play that during the holidays. And yeah, basically just enjoying the free time we've had, because right now we started the new groups in our school. So we have a lot of students, mainly learning Polish. Everybody just with the lockdown coming to an end in Poland, everyone wants to learn Polish again. All those immigrants who came before last year. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of work probably until the late spring, I think.
That sounds like a busy period for you. And what about your tech issues? Because we did hear something about that.
Oh yeah, I had some surprising tech issues actually with my SSD. I don't really know what happened with that, but at some point it just stopped working. The system was going really slow, and I returned the PC. It was still I was able, to get it back to the store, and they kind of fixed it. It looks all right. I just received the PC back today. I've been testing it the whole day, And yeah, so far so good. I hope it's gonna stay that way. I'm gonna continue talking to you guys today, but you never know.
Yeah, you know, the curse of Novigrad, just hardware going bonkers for whatever reason, and nobody knows what's happening, why it's happening.
Yeah.
We've had that problems before. Villa, my intoxicated friend. What's going on, buddy?
I'm good. Yeah, I mean, like the other two, I've just spent the holiday season just chilling, not really doing much. Been getting back to Gwent, more hardcore, I guess, this season. You know, get ready for the next season, and yeah, been chilling, nothing much. Trying to stay away from the cold because it is fucking freezing out there, and that's about it.
Speaking of which, do you guys have snow? Because that
Yes,
seems
a
to
lot.
be the major topic on Twitch right now. Everyone just asking themselves, guys, do you have snow? Do you have snow? Is it snowing right there?
We finally do in Poland. It started snowing like 2 days ago, I think. So last year we had like no snow whatsoever during the whole winter in the city I'm in. And nowadays we can enjoy the pretty winter city. It's been something I was looking forward to. It's pretty cool.
I haven't seen snow in a couple of years, and I think Shinmiri is in the same boat. I don't think Seattle is a very snowy city.
No, it's not. I was gonna say Seattle rains a lot, but it doesn't snow very much. It usually only snows like once a year, and sometimes it's like that one time per year. Sometimes it'll just melt before you wake up, and you won't even have known that it snowed. But yeah, it's pretty mild here. I like it. I like the weather here. I used to live in Chicago, and it snowed like all the time, like half of the year in Chicago. But I like it here better for the weather. It's cooler in the summer, warmer in the winter. It's a little bit rainy / cloudy.
Yeah, sounds like Holland.
Mm-hmm.
We have a very similar climate. A lot of rain, foggy, not too warm, not too cold. But yeah, I always complain that I haven't seen snow since I think November 2018. It's been a while. It's overdue.
Oh wow.
But anyway, guys, I think we are supposed to talk about Gwent. At the same time, there is a lot of things happening and not too many things happening. So let's start with that. Let's start with the announcement. There is no balance patch at the end of the season. And my question to all of you is: are you guys surprised by the fact that we are not getting any balance changes whatsoever this month?
For me, I'm not that surprised. I think like in the past year or two, the January patch is always really small or even non-existent. And that's usually because like their CDPR employees are all on vacation at the end of December, so they don't really have time to make adjustments. And if they were to make any adjustments, they would have had to like lock them in by a few days after the Way of the Witcher expansion. So it's just like they don't have enough time to gather data or test things. So I'm not really surprised. I think that most people could expect this if you're really looking at the pattern from the past few years.
Yeah, of course, unless you are a new player who doesn't know what happened last year or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And you might be a little bit surprised. Villa Hesser, similar situation? Similar feelings
basically.
or
Like that I've been around since like 2017, and I don't think during that time frame there's ever been like a big batch after December. So it doesn't really shock me because it's like Shin said, basically holidays for the employees and they don't have time to do all of this stuff. So it is what it is. It's a bit sad, but yeah, it's understandable.
I like how
I was
you
actually surprised with people being surprised with no content, because this is what's been happening for a while right now. And yeah, it's obvious that, especially after the hot season of the release of Cyberpunk as well, I can imagine that the whole company just wanted to, have some rest and just go away for a while before coming back to work on all the projects they have. So that's understandable.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like a lot of other people do are just maybe slightly disappointed that they didn't touch anything, but it's understandable. Like, you can expect that, as Shimiri already said, they either didn't have the data or didn't have enough time to evaluate it or test the new solutions. But I would like to follow up on this and ask you guys about the way it was announced, because like, considering how many new players there are, right? 2020 is the year Gwent released on mobile, and it's also the year we got our first journeys, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't really announced. It was a random reply to a tweet, and that is something that somehow did upset me. That it wasn't just announced, earlier, like a couple of weeks before the patch. Guys, remember, it's the holiday season. There's not going to be a balance patch at the end of the month. And from what I gather, a lot of people just didn't know about that.
Yeah, I don't personally mind the timing of the announcement that much. But I'm with you. I agree with you that, like, the first that we hear about it is in a reply on Twitter is kind of hard to find. I would have liked to see it like on the Plague Gwent website or in the game client or something like that, or even just like an official Plague Gwent tweet. So with the timing, I don't know if I would have wanted to know for certain that there was going to be no balance changes like weeks in advance, because I feel like news like that is different people take it different ways, but it can be very demotivating, and it can cause you to like not want to play because you feel like there's not going to be any new stuff coming for a while. So I can definitely understand from both a player perspective and a developer perspective not to want to give that information out too soon.
While I agree with you, you also have to remember that you have content creators who like to plan things ahead. For example, a podcast episode. So not knowing this in advance was a little bit problematic for us.
Right. Yeah, so it's difficult. You have to like take into account all the different perspectives, and it's not very straightforward on what the best decision is for everyone.
Yeah, I exchanged a couple of tweets with Pavo about that, and it seems they will try to take that into account next year. But they also postponed the smaller patch 8.1. We're actually getting some stuff in it, and I know that it's going to sound like a conspiracy theory or maybe wishful thinking at best. But considering this delayed patch, do you guys think that the devs might actually squeeze in some balance changes after all?
No.
No, I don't think so. I wouldn't get our hopes up.
Yeah. I don't
Probably
think
not.
it's realistic to expect them to do anything like that. Yeah.
I mean, of course, it's only a week, so that sounds rather unlikely, but still, I had to ask.
I mean, yeah.
I would imagine that like all of their efforts are focused on getting this bug fixed as soon as possible, whatever it is, and then like shipping out the patch, right? Like, I don't think they're going to try to devote more time and drag it out longer to squeeze in additional balance changes that weren't originally planned.
Yeah, absolutely, because we actually learned today that the journey as well is being postponed, so it seems like the bug really has broken the game.
I didn't hear that about the journey.
Yeah,
what do you mean it's been postponed?
The new journey is delayed by a week.
Oh, okay. So when is it supposed to come out?
It was supposed to come out, I think, February 1st, and now it's February 8th.
Oh, okay.
I mean, a lot of people were saying it's not the first time they are doing that with the journey, but considering how impactful this bug they were talking about is, it wouldn't surprise me if it also had an effect on the journey.
Maybe. February 8th is supposed to be the start of the next season. Not the upcoming season, not the first competitive month, but I think it's supposed to be the start of the second competitive month. So
I think it's a league, by the way.
No, I think I think they mentioned this already. Vlad mentioned it on Twitter in another reply.
Yeah, he said it was
Okay.
gonna be like
I'm
3
not
weeks or
I'm not
something.
following every reply, so that's
Yeah.
why I haven't heard about
Yeah,
that.
that's another example of like just information that could be a little bit better communicated, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
so people were asking about how long the first competitive season is going to be because of this delay. And Vlad said it will be, so people thought it might have been like only 2 weeks long, and that would be like really, really short. But Vlad said it's going to be 3 weeks, and that the it's going to last until February 8th.
Yeah.
All right. So we actually learned something today.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah, but we are not getting probably any balance as we mentioned before, but we are getting a new card. And do you think it will see play? That's something that was kind of unexpected actually for me. And we are getting that right before the competitive season. I don't know. For me, it doesn't look that competitive. I'm not sure if it's gonna shake the meta that much, and it's gonna affect, for example, the deck building for the pro players. But have you tried the aircrafting with that card, and how does it look in your eyes, guys?
Yeah.
Shinmiri, what do you think about it?
Yeah, let's start with Shinmiri, and then we're gonna go to Villa.
Okay. Yes, I have taken a look at the card. For anybody who doesn't know, it's Madoc, a Witcher, 3 base strength, 10 provisions, and it's like a bomb synergy card.
Yeah.
It's like a Flying Redanian, but for bombs. Every time you play a bomb, it will come out of your deck or your graveyard. And it also has an order ability to destroy itself and deal 3 random damage to the opposite row. Kind of like technically it does the, what is it, Ragnarok Cataclysm effect.
The Cataclysm.
That nobody has ever seen in this game for a year and a half or so. But anyways, I think the card is probably going to be not very competitive, mainly because the bombs in the game suck. So it's like it's a good card. If bombs were good, I think Madoc would be good. But bombs are really bad. And I was looking at it, and I think the only viable deck that it might work in is like something like Scoia'tael no unit control. Scoia'tael has extra bombs because of making a bomb from the newest expansion, which is actually a decent card. It's better than a lot of people thought it was going to be, making a bomb.
Yeah, we actually know something about that because we revealed it on this very podcast, and the chat was not very happy.
We were not happy either.
Hey, I'm playing it in my no unit ST. It's actually pretty good. It's not a unit, it's removal. And it's a 4/4 removal. It's kind of like, it's a worse version of Gutting Slash, I'd say. But it's still 4 provisions. And 4 provision cards, you usually can find some use for a lot of 4 provision cards because they are the cheapest cards available. And it gives you removal. It's usually good removal early in a round when they don't have that many units, right? But anyways, about Madoc, I think there's not enough good bombs to make use of him, but if bombs were ever buffed or new bombs are introduced, I think he could become pretty good.
I think that a lot of people are worried that if Madoc starts to see play, all you're gonna see is Amnesty and Swears. Because Madoc is 3 power. Also, I was watching McBeer the other day, and he seemed very positive about the card until he started looking at the bombs and he realized that we have Northern Wind that banishes. So Madoc versus Madoc, somebody can just play Northern Wind, banish the other Madoc, and get your own Madoc out.
That's true. So I don't agree that Amnesty Swears is going to be like super popular as a counter to Madoc. Because, I mean, Lippy is super popular right now, and Amnesty Swears is amazing versus Lippy, but you don't see any Amnesty Swears in the meta. So I don't think, like, Madoc is going to push that over the line. But that's just my personal opinion. I don't think Madoc is going to be worth playing for the most part, so I don't think it's going to be very impactful to the meta next month.
Yeah, it's a very theoretical scenario. Like, if Madoc gets popular, then maybe Amnesty could get popular, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And Villa, what about you? How do you feel about Madoc as a professional player?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much echo Shin's thoughts. Like, I don't. I mean, I'm sure there will be people who try it out with like Dragon Stream or something, but yeah, I don't think this card is ever, or well, not ever. This card is definitely not good right now, and I don't think it's something.
It's not even good with Dragon Stream. It has
Yeah,
like
it's not-
anti-synergy
Yeah,
with Dragon Stream.
It is as well, yeah. But I'm sure there will be some memes who try it out. Like,
There's gonna be, I'm calling it now, there's gonna be a Dandelion Cliff show where where somebody overwrites their own Dragon Stream with the Cataclysm of Order ability of Madoc.
And I can tell you, now that you said it,
Yeah.
I can totally see a clip being made out of this and preceding the actual play on Dandelion's show. Just Shinmiri explaining what's gonna happen and it actually happening.
Yeah.
But I would actually correct you on one thing, because you said that nobody has seen Ragnarok in like a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it in certain seasonal mode, when you can play a special card twice.
Oh, yeah.
That's where
true.
Cataclysm actually sees some play.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I don't play much seasonal mode, so I only play seasonal mode when my chat forces me to with channel points.
You playing Balu Rush is just a piece of art. It's a thing of beauty. Okay, Hesser, what else do we have in stock?
Yeah, we are actually mentioning that one, right? So we'll have to wait a bit longer before we see Madoc in action. I think, a lot of people will have some fun with that, because that's another card to play around with. And I'm definitely going to try it out, I think. And it looks like CDPR is trying to push some bombs synergies as well. Every expansion we are getting some sort of bombs, I think, almost, probably. And I think they have maybe some major plan for that, but we'll have to see a bit longer to see if it happens.
I sure would hope so if they print a card like this. Like, it's
right?
Just gonna say collecting dust in the collection if they don't do anything about it.
I also hope that bombs are not just the placeholder and the fillers in every expansion. But you never know. But yeah, speaking of the bug we mentioned before, right? The game ranking bug, because of which they moved the journey and they moved the patch as well. Do you have like any idea what sort of bug that might be?
I honestly have no clue, but it seems to be pretty significant, as like bugs that have popped up last minute in the history of Gwent. I feel like they've been able to deal with and squash pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I feel like this week-long delay is one of the longest we've had to suffer because of some unpredictable bug. But yeah, I have no clue.
It's like also weird that nobody actually found out anything about that bug, right? It's still waiting somewhere to be discovered and to abused.
Well, it could be a bug with a new build that's not on the live client. That's what I assumed. I mean, because if the bug was around right now, then it seems like they could just release it. Nobody even knows it's there. So
I think the best reaction to that was actually Ryan sending Moligian a message like, "What has your new card done to the game, man?" But okay, the patch is being delayed. We all know about that. We already talked about that. So let's talk about the expansion, because we are only a month into Way of the Witcher. I think it's enough time to actually evaluate it and compare it to the previous expansions. So how would you rate it compared to the previous content updates? Are you happy with the new tools that each faction has been given? Are you happy with the archetypes that have been strengthened by this expansion?
For me, I liked this expansion. I think it was pretty good, and it was pretty significant considering that it was only 70 cards. So it's like one of the smallest expansions that Gwent has gotten. I have some things that I dislike, but I think in general it was a pretty successful expansion. We got to see some new archetypes in different factions. We got to see some old archetypes buffed, specifically in Nilfgaard. And yeah, I'm having fun. I'm having fun in Gwent right now. I think my major complaint is that with this expansion, matchups in general have gotten a little bit more extreme. So I think like whereas common matchups might have been like 60-40 for a favored deck before, now is closer to like 70-30. And I hope it doesn't like go too far, because I don't want to queue into a matchup and feel hopeless and feel like no matter what I do that I'm probably going to lose because I just had a bad queue roulette. Where I want to have the ability to outplay and outsmart my opponent even from an unfavored position.
Yeah, that's...
So I think like the biggest example of that would be like V, right? If you don't play enough tall punish, or if you don't play enough engines or crazy engines, then you kind of lose to V.
But I agree with what you said about the impact of the expansion, despite it being only 70-ish cards. I think it's probably the most complex expansion in terms of new abilities. Because if you look at the previous expansions, you will see a lot of, damage by 2 stuff.
I'm a huge fan of like the unique abilities that they released in the expansion, as well as Adrenaline keyword. I think Adrenaline keyword, I hope that they continue taking advantage of that keyword and mechanic in the future, because it's like another lever for them to balance the game with. Like, you know how beta Gwent was mostly just points, right? And you can only balance with points and maybe like bronze, silver, gold restrictions. And then they went with Homecoming, and now you have provisions that you can use to adjust the balance of a card. And then you had armor that they added. And armor is a really important tool for balancing engines, because it makes it harder for you to remove them, but it doesn't give them points right off the bat. And now Adrenaline is like another tool, another lever that they can pull to balance cards and restrict cards. And you can use Adrenaline as a boon or even as a curse, like a downside, which I think is really awesome.
Plus, we also have Devotion. It also can be used potentially to balance some cards.
Yeah, and they didn't take advantage of Devotion in this expansion, which I think is understandable because it's so small. But I hope that they don't forget about that either going forward.
Yeah, because that's a point of criticism I've seen a lot. Just CDPR introducing a new keyword or a new mechanic and then completely forgetting about that.
Yeah, this happens in other card games as well. There are some themes that they are introducing in one expansion, and then maybe reintroducing them after a while, after people forget about them, right? And make it feel fresh. And they don't have to, for example, come up with something new. They can just revisit another archetype, another keyword. So that would make sense for them as well, in terms of developing the game. But yeah, I'm with Shinmiri here about the Adrenaline. I was a bit worried in the beginning that this will make the game really too big brain for me, for example, or for some other players. But it turned out really interesting and really makes game more interesting, definitely.
Speaking of big brains, I would like to go faction by faction, and let's start with Squareto, because if you are playing against Movement, there is definitely some big brains involved. The passive points. It's been discussed all over the place. Just people playing against Squareto and failing at math. And my question will be, with up to I think 8 passive engines per match, Movement is just a nightmare to pass against. So what's your opinion on passive points and their current value output, especially in Squareto?
Passive points are really strong. It's been a strong mechanic for a long time. I know one of our teammates, Sergio, he has this saying that if a card has the magic words at the end of your turn, it's going to be an OP card. Because it automatically does stuff at the end of your turn, and especially in round 1 and round 2, when after you pass, you're still getting points after you pass, right? Because the round's not over and your opponent's still trying to catch up. Like, we all know those situations where like you've got a drummer, a Trident infantry, and an Ana on the other side, and it's just like getting 5 points a turn. And then with the Scoia'tael engines, yeah, Cat Witchers, Matrons, Sentries, Gezra. The game's definitely getting more complex as more and more expansions come out. I don't feel like it's over the line yet. I don't feel like you can't handle it, but yeah, it's going to take a little bit more. It's going to take a little bit more roping for you to plan out if you're going to have enough points to catch up. And also, you have to understand game mechanics like end of turn priority. Like melee row is going to activate first. So if you have the Dryad Matron on the back row and a Cat Witcher on the front row, the Cat Witcher will jump to the back row and provide a unit for the Matron to buff afterwards. So like you have to make sure you understand how these nuances work in terms of the mechanics.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the biggest difference compared to, for example, drummers and other NR passive engines. The positioning doesn't really play that much of a role there. Like, okay, it's gonna boost the unit to the right, so it's easy to do the math. But here you actually have to remember what is going to happen first. Especially the reaction you just mentioned, Cat Witcher and Matron, because sometimes you just forget about that. And there's been enough Dandelion clips showcasing that even content creators struggle with that.
Yeah, for sure. Content creators are not immune to Pepegaing. I know this all too well.
We can't lose.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the saber-toothed tiger math that
it's not even shown. It's not even shown. That's the biggest problem.
I think a lot of people get bamboozled by that.
I got a bit worried too because they didn't mention anything about the card in the patch notes.
Oh yeah, they mentioned fixing the row subtotals.
Yeah,
so that's going to be fixed, but I have no idea.
The specific card, it's a bit spooky to me. To think that it's still gonna be like, ooh, I don't have any points.
Right. Whenever that card's on the board, you gotta just like manually check.
Yeah.
Make sure
just add +7.
Well, not even that, because sometimes it counts it and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know like how
it's just
it
weird.
works.
It's just weird because it's not that it's like of course it's easy to detect, but like sometimes I just simply like when I do the math, I look at the row and I forget it that it doesn't count the 7 points because I thought I counted it last turn or whatever. It's just, It's just weird. That's why I'm worried. Not that it's problematic, because if you just do the math, you can figure it out. But
yeah, it's not like old Mahakam Horn. Just add +8 and you know what's happening.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, you can still bamboozle people with Horn. That's surprising.
You can, yeah. I played a game yesterday against someone who played a trap on turn 2, and it looked like Mahakam Horn, it smelled like Mahakam Horn, and then eventually I passed and it didn't flip over, and it was like the biggest reverse bamboozle ever. It was like a serpent trap for the entire round, and the guy couldn't catch up anymore because he got no points from his serpent trap.
Oh man, Bamboozle the Bamboozler. Moving on.
Yeah, well, we've seen like many people suggesting Devotion or Adrenaline on certain cards like V and Lippy. And do you think it's a good idea of dealing with that problem, with these problematic cards, or should keywords like that be used more extensively moving forward? What would you suggest to do with V and Lippy right now?
Okay, so I think Devotion is a terrible idea for both of those cards because it basically just kills the card. Devotion on V would cut like 5 tutors out of the deck, and there's just no point in playing it anymore. Same with Lippy. Lippy, you would lose Roach, Knickers, Oniromancy, Heatwave, all staples of the deck, and all cards that you get to replay with Lippy. So yeah, Devotion's not a good idea. There probably are other better ways to balance them. With V, I've heard a lot of different ideas. I've seen suggestions on Reddit, some of them better than others. Adrenaline is something maybe to consider. Maybe just like, I think the most interesting idea that I heard was to start V's buff at 4, so higher than where it is now, but every time it gets shuffled into the deck, that increase gets decreased by 1. So the first time you shuffle it, it increases base strength by 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, then 0. So it will like cap out at 18. But it's a little bit better at the beginning, but it doesn't go to like crazy levels like 26 or 29 or whatever.
Guys,
18-point card is still really good.
Guys, I would just like to highlight the fact that my idea just got propped by the one and only Shinmiri.
Is that your idea?
Yeah,
I
it
didn't
was
know
my
that.
idea, yeah.
Okay. I was it your post on Reddit?
Oh, yeah,
I don't
on
really
Reddit.
pay attention that much to names of who's posting what, but I'm just like reading the content. I thought that
Yeah,
was
me
really good.
neither. But because it was my post, I just remember that.
Yeah, I mean, usually reading Reddit is a mistake.
Not always, but it's a great place if you want to learn about all kinds of news. Because if you are like me, and if you are not following every Twitter reply that Pavel or Vlad have ever posted, you just go to Reddit and you see that right away.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can see that. Well, I personally, it's whatever. I just haven't found the Reddit attraction whatsoever.
The other suggestion that I liked was to attack it from the overwhelming hunger leader side of things, because I think one of the main reasons V is so strong is that you can't stop them from, unless you're playing lockdown, you can't stop them from consuming at least like 3 or 4 times, because you get the 3 leader charges, and then haunt is a fork where they can either consume with the banshee or the barghest that spawns immediately, right? So if you somehow like nerf overwhelming hunger, it could be a way to nerf V, so that you have to actually rely more on sticking consumers like a Slizzard or a Barghest or something, and that gives your opponent more chances to interact. Because I've had games where I've killed every single consumer and I still lost to V, just because just consuming it 4 times and playing it 5 times is already really, really.
I think what's really frustrating about V is how consistent it actually is, despite all the tutors. Like, you would think that there is no way in hell they're gonna get all the tools, and yet they do it every single match. So my question would be, because a lot of people see those cards as a problem, Lippy and V, but are they really? So I've also seen voices that Lippy and V are fine. So maybe we shouldn't do anything to them. What do you guys think?
I don't think V is fine. I think Lippy is closer to being fine. V is too binary for my taste. I think there's a lot of decks that just you can't really play in a meta where V is popular, because you just like auto lose. You just really have no chance. Even a strong deck like Patricidal Fury Warriors just like has no chance against V. It's super, super unfavored. And you have to be running like multiple tall punishes or some sort of gimmick to stop like lockdown to stop their strategy from unfolding. Lippy is a bit more fair. I think you can probably balance Lippy just by power and provision nerfs to bring its win rate down a little bit. For me, I've never been that frustrated playing against Lippy. And I think a lot of the frustration against Lippy is due to how popular it is in the meta. Like, any deck that you play against over and over and over again, you're going to start hating, right? And when Lippy wasn't very popular, I actually really enjoyed both playing as Lippy and against Lippy. I thought it was like one of those unintuitive matchups or unintuitive decks where normally you're trying to save, your golds for round 3 and maybe play bronzes in round 1, but Lippy kind of flips that on its head, and it's okay, or it's good to play all your golds in round 1. I think it's okay for a deck to have that sort of unique style. I think that makes the game more interesting.
An interesting idea that I heard regarding reworking Lippy is to make him resurrect, or just move the cards from your graveyard to your deck, only faction cards. So it's like half devotion. So you can still play neutrals, you can still play all the neutrals once, but once you play Lippy, you only get Skellige cards back into your deck. So you can still play Ceres, but you cannot play second Heatwave, second Cog, you don't get second Roach or second Knickers. I'm not sure how balanced that will be, but I think it's just an interesting idea. Half devotion.
That's a pretty huge nerf. I think that's a pretty big nerf. Like, you're taking 6 points away from the Lippy already, and the lack of flexibility on being able to play Heatwave, Curse of Corruption again. I think it would be too harsh. But that's just my opinion. I don't think Lippy is that strong of a deck. It's definitely strong. It's definitely good, but I think it's being overrated, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that people just overreact.
Yeah, the
When it
feeling I have is that people just get frustrated by Lippy because they don't exactly know what's the best way to necessarily beat Lippy. Like, it's a very beatable deck with a lot of different factions. And they just get frustrated because Lippy just early on they just have a lot more points and they get, round control easy and all of that. But if you just, think through it, it's actually pretty easy to beat them. Of course, me saying that isn't necessarily like, oh wow, I can just magically beat Lippy now, but
I do agree with Villa that people don't understand Lippy that well. And I see it all the time, people complaining about Lippy. They complain about, oh my god, they're playing their entire deck twice, and they're getting all these golds twice. And like honestly, most Lippys only get 1 gold twice. That's Ceres.
Yeah.
I mean, outside of the ones that auto thin from the deck, right? Like Knickers.
Also, there's of course there's some like discard, like Hamish Gold, Biana RNG,
Yeah,
but
it
that's
happens.
very occasional. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like usually the only big power play that they're playing twice is Ceres.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you compare it actually to V, I think Leapy is like more likely to like get messed up hand, right? So it's I think it's harder to pull off all the combo than when you play V, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's not as uninteractive as V.
Right. And part of it also is people getting red coin abused by Lippy feels bad. But a lot of cases, if your deck is like a good long round deck, you just don't give up round one.
You can just fight your
you just
way to
keep
win
playing,
round.
even if you lose a card advantage and you have to go 2 cards down to win round 1. Like getting the long round 3 is just still going to be a win for you if your deck is engine heavy enough.
Yeah.
And maybe people are just not doing that, and they go down by 25 points in round 1, and they just give it up, and then they get pushed by Lippy.
Yeah.
Yeah, my approach was, and I'm not a competitive player, so it's probably not gonna work for everyone. But my approach was, when I was queuing into Lippy all the time, I just started playing Enslave. And it's incidentally also good against movement and our Witchers and Assimilate and Lockdown.
Lockdown is good too against Lippy. They don't get to play their Ceres. They don't really get they don't get to thin with their Ceres.
Yeah, but it's just a spicier feeling if you yoink their Ceres.
Yeah, I think the thing with Lockdown is Lippy can beat Lockdown.
It can still beat it, but I think
that's what I like. Especially I found, funnily enough, you talk about red coin being better, but if you go blue coin as Lippy against Lockdown, and especially if you take advantage of stratagems like Crystal Skull right now, and you veil your archers and whatever, then you can actually get that steal that series tempo early on, and that way you can actually beat Lockdown rather easily. But I mean, yeah, for sure, Lockdown's a tougher not to crack for Lippy.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's an auto win for Lockdown in any sense, but I think it can help.
And speaking of Lockdown, I think the next question kind of touches that topic.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about Nilfgaard a bit. So, as always, there are some voices that Nilfgaard should be nerfed as well, but is there anything really that requires nerfing?
People don't like it when their strategy gets interrupted or messed with or whatever. So Nilfgaard's always Nilfgaard's always like the most loved faction and the most hated faction at the same time.
Yeah.
Everyone is, pulling their pitchforks and torches out when Nilfgaard is good, but then when it's not good, people are angry because it's not good and you can't play Nilfgaard. It's a bit of a mess with Nilfgaard.
Yeah, but with all honesty, if you look at each strong Nilfgaard card, I don't think there is anything to be nerfed. There isn't anything that really stands out in a way where you would think this is OP, it should be adjusted.
So go ahead, Villa.
Maybe Colgrim, in a way.
I'm just, in my personal opinion right now, the only thing that I would change with Nilfgaard is maybe look a bit at like Coup de Grace, because I feel like 9 provisions and 3 damage it makes it a bit too good. But other than that, I actually feel fine with it. There's like a lot of good plays, but a lot of good plays that require setup mostly, and therefore I think it's actually fine. But yeah, I think coup de grace is that too strong.
I mean, even coup de grace requires that because mostly people are playing it to create or spawn second Joachim.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing.
So if Joachim gets purified, consumed, or if somebody plays defender on that row, your coup is not really going to be worth a lot.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing necessarily, but I think that 9 provision, 3 damage, spawn and play, even the Joachim, like I think it's a tad too on the stronger side. I think that is the only thing I'd touch. Like make coup 10. I wouldn't change the damage at all. I think the damage is fine. I'd just make it a bit higher provision cost.
I completely agree with Villa. I think it was a really big buff for coup. It was like a triple buff.
No.
Because they buff the damage, they buff the provisions, and they buff. When buffing the damage, it makes it less likely to brick because you can now copy like Garo Professionals and Hjalmars and all these other 3 strength threats with deploy. I would like to see it go back to 10 provisions and just 3 damage as well. But overall, I think Nilfgaard is in a really good spot. They have multiple competitive archetypes, right? They have an engine archetype with Assimilate. They have control archetype with Lockdown Ball, and they have like a all-in WinCon Colgrim archetype that's pretty competitive as well. I think it can be a little bit annoying to play against the Clogged Colgrim deck because it increases the amount of draw RNG there is in the game because you need to draw your good cards earlier so that they don't get stuck behind all the clog. That's really the only downside, I think, of one of the more popular meta NG decks. But I like NG, and I hope that they're able to bring other factions to the same level as NG is, where there's like 3 competitive archetypes.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons Assimilate got pretty competitive is it's actually targeted RNG. It's no longer the RNG fiesta that it used to be, that you just create something and you don't know what's gonna be. Now you have cards like Artorius, you have cards like Brathens, you have cards like Coup, where you actually know what you're getting.
You have to also take into account that the other factions got a lot of better cards to copy and always do.
Oh yeah, of course, absolutely.
Expansion.
100% agreed.
And also like the portal nerf was a buff.
Yeah.
Provision nerf, provision buff, whatever. It was a pretty big deal for Assimilate in general because now you can fit a lot more into the deck as well to benefit off of the Assimilate tags. That's a pretty huge buff as well.
Yeah, and the slowness of like having the 3 turn timer for the second engine is not that significant of a downside. Yeah. At least not for Assimilate, because Assimilate's usually playing like 2 engines after the first turn anyways, so you're not really activating or missing out on any Assimilate activations for the second engine from Portal.
But I would like to talk a little bit more about Colgrim because that was originally one of our questions, and people just seem to hate Colgrim. I was extremely wrong about that card because when they first showed it, I was like, "Oh come on, man! Skellige is popular. Just Longship is not take care of that. Like there is no way Colgrim even survives." And yet, it's a pretty competitive deck. And because of its provision cost, it can be played twice with renewal. And the pitchforks are out. People are hunting Colgrim, just like in The Witcher 3. Lore friendly. So do you guys think there should be any changes to Colgrim or to deck clogging / deck manipulation?
Yeah, like I mentioned, I think the Colgrim is not the biggest issue with the deck. I think the biggest issue with the deck is the clogging. And it's very frustrating to be on the receiving end of the clogging and having these answers that can actually win you the match, but just never drawing them because they're stuck behind like 5 Arrakis drones. But I don't know, you can't really fix that issue without completely upending the whole archetype is the problem. So it's not an easy solution, in my opinion. You could just end up, the easier solution would to be just nerf Colgrim, but I feel like Colgrim's a pretty interesting card. I like these unique mechanics. I don't want to see them nerf all these unique mechanics.
You could bump his provisions to 10.
I no, but I think that's something that would almost destroy the card, because the main attraction is getting as many points as you can with Colgrim, and therefore it's good because right now you can get consistently a lot of points. And buffing it out to a new range is probably pretty bad.
But the problem is that it's an all-in win con, and you would assume that if you bleed Colgrim, you are gonna win, but you are not gonna win because they have Renew.
Well, that depends a lot.
And if you bump his provisions, he won't be a Renew target anymore. So you still get a lot of points with Colgrim, but you cannot play him twice.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it, but I think in long term, I think Colgrim is just not gonna be that. Honestly, not that good. I don't find it that good right now at the moment. This is my personal opinion. I think if you buff it to 10 out of Renew range, it takes all the attraction out of playing the card.
I agree.
Like, you just play these slow mid-tier cards to clog your opponent's deck, but in the end, it actually doesn't even do that much. The opponent has 2 mulligans per round.
Yeah, and they have thinning as well.
Yeah, they have their own Tudors. Like, there's a lot of things that just avoid it completely. And like I said, personally, I haven't found the deck problematic whatsoever. So I think, yeah, just putting it out of Renew range would kill it completely.
I've played the deck with both Renew version and without Renew version, and without Renew, the deck can only win 1 round.
Yeah.
So like, it's not viable without Renew. And even with Renew, you usually can't win the first round if your opponent doesn't give up the first round, because you're like Villa said, you're playing like 5 tempo, 6 tempo Clogger cards, and you're playing a lot of them, so you're probably not winning round 1. And then they can push you to get your first Colgrim out or your defender out or something, and then have 1 answer for your Colgrim in round 3, and that's enough. And it doesn't seem like unreasonable for Colgrim decks to be able to play Renew.
All right, fair points. That's why I like to discuss things with competitive players, because they clearly know more about the game than I do.
I think like Colgrim Libby are on a different level of frustration / binariness compared to V.
Yeah.
So like between the 3 of them, I would definitely want something done about V. I also am the type of person and player that wants to lean towards not neutering unique strategies and unique cards and mechanics, because I feel like that's really important to the fun factor of Gwent.
The health of Gwent, even if you call it that. Like, you have to have fresh concepts in decks to keep the game healthy and going and interesting.
Otherwise you get back to the complaints about everything's boost and damage.
And you get Jason Slammer ranting on his own stream about people complaining about boost and damage.
Yeah.
Actually, the next question should be about something fun.
Oh yeah, so we are discussing the expansion faction by faction, actually, and we had some questions about the Syndicate. We're going to move to that as well later, but let's start with Northern Realms, and we have the Witcher-based list, and some players getting some really sick MMR scores out of that list. And overall, the community seems to regard it as fun to play, but not everyone is happy, for example, with Erlang's immunity. So what's your take on that?
I find Erland's immunity very irrelevant.
Yeah,
you want to play the card for carryover, so I think it's like, guys, come on.
I think
you're gonna use the Erland ability maybe once in 10 games. Maybe not even that. Like, for me, it's a bit ridiculous to find this complaint, but yeah.
I think immunity is one of those things that people are always gonna complain about.
But
the
biggest attraction of the card is getting the value from the carryover and getting those green numbers. So for me, it is hard to grasp the idea that the immunity is like broken.
Villa and I had the exact same reaction, like raising one eyebrow when Hester said people don't like the immunity. It's like he said, I think it's fairly irrelevant. The only time I've personally played Erlang for immunity is in an Archgriffin deck, as like a way to protect the Archgriffin points in round 3. And we all know that deck is a complete meme. So yeah, and the popular meta Witchers deck, it always plays Erlang. You have so many different ways to get him through selective mutation and Quen, and also like drawing Erlang naturally, that you're in most games you're playing him in round 1.
Yeah, so you have
It's quite often the opening play, actually.
You have like 3 different ways of finding Erlang. Like you're opening mulligans, you have selective mutation, and you have Geralt Quen. So more often than not, the Northern Realms player will have Erlang round 1. So yeah, the immunity.
It's really like an opening play of sorts.
Yeah.
And I mean, even if you do play Erlang in round 3, in a normal deck, you're not going to have that many points on him. Because you're going to have drawn most of your deck already.
You're going to have like maybe 5 units left in your deck, something along those lines. Maybe that's even on a bit of the extreme side. Some cases you have like 4, 3 units.
Yeah. Actually, I've seen like 6 or 7 once, but I think that was really just an outlier. But what I like about this deck, what I like about NR Witchers is it's probably the only deck that people don't have any negative feelings about. Like other than some.
You know why? Because it doesn't interact with your side of the board. It doesn't impede your strategy.
I mean, V doesn't interact with your side of the board either.
Okay,
V's point output is a lot different still compared.
Of course, absolutely.
No, but the thing is, you also can't interact with V. Is the problem?
Yeah,
like NR Witchers is a deck that doesn't mess with your strategy, and you are allowed to mess with theirs. So it feels very fair to the opponent, like right?
Yeah, but it's a solitaire deck, but you can do something about it. Whereas V is a solitaire deck, but you really can't do anything about it. Like, yeah, I think it's honestly, in my opinion, it's quite that simple. But there's more to it, but that's like the easiest way for me to summarize it.
Yeah, and I agree. But still, you know, like if you look at this expansion, almost every meta deck in a way feels annoying to play against. Like Lippy because of points, V because V is being V, you know, Lockdown because that's the sole purpose of that deck, to be annoying. And then, you know, every now and then you're gonna play against NR Witchers and you have this good feeling, oh, this is actually fun to play against.
Yeah, deck's fun.
In card games, when you're playing at a high level, competitive decks always have something unfair about them. That's why they're competitive. Yeah. Like, you don't get a competitive deck for just being fair.
No, I 100% agree on this. Like, there's no way a competitive deck is a fair deck.
So that's why
that just doesn't exist.
If you're playing at a high level, it's very easy to find things to complain about because every deck is unfair.
I mean, not even if you're playing on the high level, because, you know, people play on the high level, they post their decks and then everyone is playing them. So that kind of, you know, trickles down to the lower ranks as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, this is off topic, but I'm just gonna put that out there. I'm a bit concerned about the amount of quote unquote net decking down below, because I feel like it doesn't help new Gwent players whatsoever. I think it makes them worse off if they net deck and they don't properly learn the fundamentals of the game. That makes me a bit worried, but yeah.
That's a inherent problem for every card game.
Yeah.
Like, you can't stop net decking. It's just human nature to copy what works, right? And it's up to the players themselves to hopefully understand the decks that they're copying and try to get a general understanding of how or why the deck is good.
Yeah, I guess I'm a bit of a special case.
We already know that.
I never found net decking like that, like, interesting. I wanted to figure out my own ways to like beat the game or whatever.
For sure.
So that's why I find it a bit weird and concerning, but I completely get it that people want to like gain fast ranks and whatever, but in the end, I think it'll actually hurt them more than they realize. It's a bit sad.
It's actually interesting that the rank at which people start NetDeck gets lower and lower and lower. Like, you know, way back when you were ranked, I don't know, 15, like you wouldn't really see NetDecks. This time around, you only are gonna see NetDecks.
That's something that happens as the game matures.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. But you know, I'm just saying that the point at which people start NetDeck shifts slowly towards lower and lower ranks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you know, there's the reason why people stay there, even if when with the NetDecked construction and archetype, right? They still rank, I don't know, 20 or something, and it's not going to change.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So they
as
have learned the
Shinmiri
game,
just
they
said, you know,
learned
it's
it.
inherent to every card game.
Yeah.
But moving on, we are talking about NR, and there's one card I want to specifically discuss, and that's Cohen. Has anyone ever successfully managed to play Cohen?
I've seen Red Ram do it like once on stream.
I personally haven't experimented much with the card, but yeah, like I've seen other people try it out.
I haven't bothered either, to be completely honest. But Rame, obviously, me and Shin's teammate, very good guy, friendly guy. He managed to pull it off, but that was like once, and after that, he has been like gone. So
theoretically, it works really well with Vicegoda if you can stick the Vicegoda and then like just manually line up everything. I think I've seen a clip somewhere where someone boosted like a board of 11s with Cohen. That's like 8 boosts per unit.
Sure like with stockpile or something ridiculous, he went and did it.
So I think it's more of a fun card, but yeah, like I personally haven't explored it too much because it seems on a theoretical level like uncompetitive.
Yeah, not does it seem only uncompetitive, but for me, even though it might be a fun card, it just seems kind of a bad card, to be completely honest. And therefore, I haven't really even bothered.
How good would the card be if it didn't buff enemies?
That's a pretty tough question. I think it'd be actually probably pretty playable, honestly. But that again, then that depends on how good NR, quote unquote, NR engines is gonna be in the long run. But or in the long run, or in different methods. But I think the card would actually be a lot more playable.
Yeah.
Speaking of playable cards, Syndicate. From glory to nothing, some people say that, you know, Syndicate needs a buff. Syndicate is not being played. I'm not really sure about that myself. I've seen some Syndicate here and there. So what do you guys think? Are you surprised by the lack of viable Syndicate decks, or do you think that there are viable Syndicate decks, but they are just not being played as much? Because it really seems that the only deck that kind of made it to the meta snapshots was the pre-expansion Hidden Cache.
I think my main problem with Syndicate is I've talked about this with a lot of our Aretusa teammates and come to the conclusion of the when the power creep keeps on happening in Gwent, the point or 2 points per coin, whatever it is, it's just so hard to like for CDPR to manage it and balance it that eventually Syndicate just kind of falls into this hole where it doesn't feel good, but when they start buffing the faction, and a coin equals like on average 2 points or even more, it's gonna be again like one of the top decks out there. I feel like the coin mechanic is making it very hard for CDPR to like keep it in check.
I mean, it's, you know, the mechanic is also making it hard for your average player to make Syndicate somehow popular, because a lot of people are just not gonna bother. It's just too complicated.
When they introduced it, it was like a new faction for more what was it, like advanced players or whatever. So I feel like that's fine, but I feel like the coin mechanic and the points per coins is the one that's gonna keep them, you know, behind with the faction.
I mean, they could print more cards like Sea Jackal that translate 1 coin to like 1.5 points as like a compromise.
I wouldn't mind, but other than that, I didn't think that Syndicate really got shafted. I think they got some decent cards, like especially Salamander Hideout. Like that card's
The
pretty
location, yeah, is really
good.
good.
Uh,
I also think that Syndicate as a whole is probably being a little bit underrated.
Yeah.
And it might still be the weakest faction, but by how the public is perceiving Syndicate, I think it's maybe a little bit underrated. I had really good success with Bounty Passiflora deck. I only played 25 games of it, which is the placements, but I got like over 2,500 on my placements with Bounty Passiflora, which was shout out to Silex, his list. But it was very surprising that it did so well. And I'm also surprised that Congregate fell off the map completely. Like, it seems like it should still be a pretty decent deck. It didn't really receive any nerfs, not direct nerfs. And for a while there, if the meta is very control heavy, like Congregate is a swarm deck that goes wide, similar to like NR Witchers, it should do decently well in that sort of meta.
I think the main problem with playing Congregate right now is that the other decks just kind of combat it with raw points. I think, and therefore it's not really seeing that much play. Because it's, especially if you queue Congregate ST, I think that's gonna be, well, 60-40 at least to ST, whereas before it was like very Congregate favored, unless you played Shiro or whatever. But like, yeah, I think just the new engines and the raw value the other decks have right now is just made Congregate a bit worse. That's what I feel like the case is.
Yeah. Syndicate is one of those factions where I think like it's got the least number of people playing it, so at the same time least number of people trying to innovate with it or experiment with it. So there definitely could be a hidden gem there somewhere.
I'm not
I
sure if
think
it's
that might be.
memes or any attempt at a competitive deck, but I saw Trinet playing Syndicate today, and he was playing with Igor, Townsfolk, Tax Collectors, and Kiki's eating the ship.
Okay.
I mean,
and
that's
that seems like a POW, but it generated an absurd amount of points.
It's one of those, like, if you get absolutely everything perfectly, it'll do fine. But that's.
I mean, he only got bronzes round and plus Igor round 3.
It sounds like a deck that's really good at winning one round.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's why I said I have no idea if it was memes or any attempt at trying to get competitive with Syndicate. But it seemed nice to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I would highly doubt that it's a quote-unquote attempt at a competitive deck. But you never know what's going on with Trinet's mind.
Yeah, at least he is experimenting with that.
Yeah,
I was kind of disappointed with the self-poisoning, as someone mentioned in the chat as well. That was something that I had some high hopes for, and it turned out to be kind of underwhelming. But at least they were, considering the fact that Syndicate is quite complicated, it looked to me like they wanted to maybe limit that complexity to some extent with the self-poisoning units and that archetype to make it maybe more accessible for newer players. And I saw some people play that deck right at the beginning, but then it obviously fell off.
People were mostly exploring the double salamander Exodia memes from what I saw. And yeah, that was never really going to be competitive, I think.
Yeah.
But I think that the foundation is there for self-poison to be good. I think cards like Salamander Hideout and the Blindheim Brothers are pretty good cards. It maybe just the archetype needs a little bit more support and it can get there.
Yeah, there's like just no way, to worry about the coins, for example. So that's definitely the way to make the faction more popular. They were posting some faction popularity charts, and yeah, I think the Syndicate is still least
Syndicate's
popular.
always going to be the least popular. Even when it was like the best deck in the game, it was still, I think, the least played faction because it's not accessible to new players.
Yeah.
There's also no Syndicate starter deck.
Is there anymore? I don't. Yeah, there is no Syndicate starter deck. They did sell like a Syndicate deck in the shop at one point, right?
Yeah,
but
they sold starter decks for every faction, I believe, with like evolving cards or whatever.
Yeah,
well, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, there's no starter for Syndicate. Yeah, we have a question here. Like, Tommy is saying, like, Self-Poison needs its own dedicated bronze spender. What do you think about? And what kind of spender would that be? Does it really need a spender? I don't know. I feel it needs more than one bronze spender to be competitive.
Maybe something like fee to boost an allied unit by 3 and give it poison, something like that.
All right.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's
or spawn.
It's kind of hard for me to like try to come up on the spot with like something that Self-Poison would
Yeah.
like.
Especially after this much beer.
Yeah.
I think the Blindheim brothers combination is really cool, but you only get one of each, and you have to get them together in the same round. But they're actually really, really powerful, right? Like, I forget the math behind it, but you get really good deal for your coins.
Yeah. All right. So we basically covered most of the factions.
I think all factions. We didn't talk about every single popular deck. For example, we didn't talk about Kelly. We didn't talk about. Wait, I think Kelly's. We didn't talk about Warriors.
Yeah.
Gaining popularity once again. But these are the decks that everyone knows. So yeah, Ezra, continue.
Yeah, we can move to the lore keepers and expanding the lore. So about there are some additions in the game. Obviously, the team is working on the lore. They are using the lore they have from Sapkowski's books, obviously, but there are definitely some people working on the new lore in the game. And do you think there is such a group? And how would you rate their work up until this point?
Oh, the internal lore keepers. I think it was meant to be a joke in a way.
It was definitely meant to be a joke, I think, and people took it way too far. But on a serious note, yeah, they're working on like new lore stuff, right? And we see that with every expansion. There are characters that we've never seen in the Witcher universe before. I think that's cool that they're expanding and making their own lore. I think that's really awesome. I'm not somebody who cares. Like, when it comes to a card game, I don't care that much about the lore, but it's a nice bonus for me on the side. And I think they are doing a good job. When it comes to the meme internal lore keepers, where Reddit is just won't let go over a stupid glass of wine or heads of a snake statue. I'm sure CDPR has its reasons for changing the card art or whatever, and I don't find it such a big deal. It's my personal opinion, I guess. And I was frankly getting a little bit sick of seeing Reddit being spammed with the memes of internal lore keepers and the snake head and stuff like that. I don't and high fantasy. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, high fantasy.
Those two words are.
I mean, you never know. Maybe
now.
they decided to add the head of a snake after all to Gore to Gwent, and maybe that was the game-breaking bug.
Oh yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe they fixed the wine glass and it broke the game. Who knows?
You never know. But I like those tweets. It happens every now and then. Like DJ being the 4th most played leader back in the day.
Oh god.
It happens it happens every now and then, and I like the way how they go about it, because they know, like, almost on the spot, okay, we fucked up. We shouldn't have said that. And it's always fun to talk to Pavel about that. Here on the podcast or elsewhere, just ask him how he feels about that, and he knows. He always goes like, yeah, the moment I posted it, I knew it was a bad idea. But what I want to talk about is the February patch, because lore keepers, memes, we cracked enough jokes about that. But we talked about a lot of potential reworks to certain cards. But what do you actually expect to be changed in February? Realistically, is it gonna be a larger patch? Because that's, I think, what people expect now.
Probably, I would guess so. Since they aren't doing much for January's patch, I think we're going to see more changes in February. And I don't really know what they're going to do, but I would assume that they're going to hopefully address something like V at the bare minimum. And then I would like to see buffs to underplayed archetypes. That's something that I always like to see in the long term is buffs to underplayed archetypes to get more archetypes into the viable or competitive range.
Oh yeah, I think everyone likes to see that. And sometimes I know that we often laugh about that, or Reddit laughs about that. That one provision change is not gonna change. It's not gonna boost the archetype, or it's not gonna shift something into playability. But quite often that's the case. Like look at Master of the Skies, for instance, or Nausicaa Sergeant. Just one provision change and the card is playable again.
One provision change is massive, especially if it's from 5 to 4 provisions. I think that's like the biggest impact of one provision. It's a lot bigger than like changing an 11 provision card to a 12 provision, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Especially, like you said, if you look at the lowest bracket, 4 or 5 provision cards, and they change there can really, either kill the card completely or move it to a more playable region. Ville, do you have any expectations when it comes to the February patch?
I mean, hard to really know what they want to necessarily do with it, but I would hope that they address some of the issues with like V and maybe even Lippy a bit. That's like kind of what I'm expecting. It's really hard for me to actually say what I'd exactly expect, because in the end they have to balance everything and it's kind of hard to like put up oh yeah, they're gonna balance this and this, but maybe there's gonna be something like I think SD might get a hit. Angie hopefully gets Q to 10, but it's hard for. This is actually like relatively tough to predict right now. Like the only one that I can be certain of is V.
Yeah,
V.
Yeah.
And just imagine this. Like imagine they nerfed V to the point where it wasn't played anymore. That would have a big impact on the meta, because I feel like the meta right now is shaped around V. And the only reason V isn't being played everywhere is because the other decks are keeping it down. Right? V has counters. V is a pretty binary sort of deck. But if V becomes out of the picture, I could see like the meta shifting significantly, even with no other changes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Ville, you said something about Skoya. I think some people here and there have been saying maybe knock the adrenaline off the Cat Witcher.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't really have an opinion. I'm just asking you guys, as people who play more competitively.
I don't think that I don't think necessarily that Cat Witcher is the problem. Personally, I love these bronzes that you can actually build around again. I like them that they're good. But if I do something, I'd probably make Gesras a bit more expensive on the provision side, but I wouldn't really do anything about the points, I don't think.
When it comes to Gesras, change the wording to then. Please. Please. I mean,
so you want it so if it doesn't move, then it doesn't do anything?
Yeah.
So
you can actually prevent it from happening by, for example, playing spies or something of the sort.
Yeah. I surprisingly, like Gezra, I thought was going to be a really crazy card, and it surprisingly has underperformed my expectations.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like
I think it's been pretty tame.
Gezra usually just plays as a 13, and then it gets answered. That's pretty much my experience with it. It's very rarely have I seen a Gezra stick on the board for longer than one turn. Cat Witcher, being able to get like 3 copies of it and having longer synergy with Sentry has been more of like a backbone for the deck. At least the engine versions of it. I could see or understand a slight nerf to Cat Witcher, maybe like Adrenaline 3 instead of Adrenaline 4, to slow it down a little bit from becoming this very strong engine in round 1 or round 2, like earlier in the round. That would maybe be my suggestion. I don't know what else. What else do you have to do with ST?
No, I think
Does-
everything else is just okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot to do with ST, but there's something to do with ST.
Frankly, I haven't seen that many ST engine decks towards the later weeks. It used to be everywhere in the first couple weeks, but it's definitely fallen in play rate.
I mean, the more Novigrad you get, then the less engine-based decks you're gonna see.
Yeah.
I think that's the general rule. And coincidentally, Novigrad plays well against V, and so ST kind of suffers from that.
So far in this month, we've gone from like very engine heavy lists being played more often at the start, engine and threat heavy lists, and then control lists coming in to counter them. And now we see like NR Witchers doing super well, and like swarm point slam lists to counter the control list. And I think that's a pretty healthy sign, right? Like the meta has naturally evolved all the way around the triangle of death, as we like to say, and maybe engine lists will come back, or like Carapace is now coming into the forefront, which has a really good matchup against like NR Witchers and other swarm decks and point slam decks that don't really have that much control.
Yeah, I might have a little bit of an extreme opinion on Carapace and Kelly, but that's not what I want to see. Just playing against that deck makes me go crazy. Just no units in general. I mean, it plays units, but just not too many.
I mean, it plays units. It's I wouldn't call Carapace a no unit deck. It actually has a lot of big threats, right? But it's more like it's a deck that's kind of immune to damage removal, but vulnerable to hard removal and tall removal.
No. I think one of the bigger problems people have with Kelly ultimately is gonna like be towards Siri Dash, because it enables Kelly to like work extremely well. I think that's where the main problem or issue is.
Yeah, I think Bushi made a video about Suri Dash some time ago.
Yeah.
And the card being very polarizing. I think that's the term he used specifically. So yeah, these are the expectations for the patch. I'm not sure if Hesser got the question because I added it a little bit later on about the journey.
The journey? Yeah, sure. I got it. So, well, the journey is it's gonna get delayed as well by 1 week or expanded by a week. So everyone is thinking about who might the new heroes of the journey be in the future. Obviously, everyone wants some more substantial characters because I can feel like a lot of viewers, for example, were not satisfied with Alzor, and now they're waiting for someone to actually, put their effort into and grind. Do you have like any guesses who might be the new hero or heroes?
I don't know who it's going to be, but I think my guess is going to be someone more prominent than Alzer, because they did the experiment with a lesser known character, and they're probably going to try to go back to somebody more like on the Yen, somebody on the Yen Dandelion Triss sort of league of famous characters in the Witcher universe. I like the Alzer journey. I really like the art, like the card backs and the especially like the aura effects for Alzer. I didn't like how slow the leader was in its animations, though. I've definitely been caught on the wrong side of the rope with Alzer's slow hand waving more than once, but hopefully the new one is a little bit faster.
The only problem I had with Alzer was he just sounds like an edgy teenager.
Oh yeah.
That's it. Like the quality of the microtransactions, the carbacks, absolutely amazing. But just playing against Alzer and somebody BMing with Alzer, just please stop. there was that line about self-proclaimed authority, and I was like, yeah, that's something I would say when I was 15 and my dad told me I was grounded. Totally, that's just Alter for you, man. You know, to move like before we move to the next segment, because I would like to end this one on a more positive note. Some beta streamers like Alias V and Merchant decided to give Gwent another go. Do you guys think we'll see more old-time streamers getting back, at least, you know, for a while, to see how Gwent is doing and what's happening in the game?
I certainly hope so. I think it was, for me, it was really cool to see some of these streamers come back and give the game a try. And I know a lot of them, along with their viewers, might have like left Gwent around the time when Homecoming just came out, and the game is in such a better state now than it was at that point. So if people give it a shot again, I think they will be pleasantly surprised and maybe stick around.
Yeah, for me it was big news, especially Merchant. Merchant was very vocal about Homecoming and the quality of the game around that time. And I think it was actually interesting that it started with MacBeard streaming, I think, something else than Gwent, and then getting hosted by Swim and Life Coach and tweeting about that, and other people saying that and liking that, and that caused other streamers to give it a go.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's kind of hard to say. I barely watch Twitch, so I mean, it's hard for me to know when they're online. But I would certainly hope so that, you know, they keep on playing, because yeah, it would be good for the game, of course.
Okay,
yeah,
so
you know, the thing is that actually he gave an impression that it was like worth revisiting, but he actually wished that the game was in that shape a couple of years ago, and maybe, you know, the whole career his career would be a bit different, right? Go a different way. But so that gave me an impression that, okay, it was cool to revisit, but I'm not coming here anymore, right, in the future.
I mean, I wouldn't really expect it. I think I don't know how Merchant's doing right now, but I think he had a really he's been successful in the MTG arena,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's gonna be it will be a big decision for him to like swap back to Gwent as his main game. I don't really see him doing that, but I do hope that, you know, he will continue playing it as a side game or checking it out once in a while.
yeah, definitely. But to move to a territory you are more familiar with, competitive Gwent, there isn't really much ground to cover. But there's a couple of questions we have that we would like to discuss with you guys. The first one being, we haven't heard much when it comes to Season 3. Do you expect some last-minute changes in regards to the format or maybe the prize pool?
If I had to guess, I would say they're probably keeping it pretty similar to Season 2. I feel like they did a relatively good job with the online format, and they're probably improving on every iteration. So I don't expect some big changes. And as for the prize pool, it's really going to depend on the crowdfunding aspect of it, right? That's like the biggest impact on how big it ends up being. But I think, you know, at the beginning of Season 2, when they announced the reduced prize pool compared to Season 1, people were concerned. But at the end of the day, like, the prize pools for Season 2 ended up being fairly comparable to Season 1, especially for like the opens, because of all the support that we got from the community, which is great to see.
And Villa, when are we gonna see you in the tournament? Like, you've been very close a couple of times.
I mean, hopefully as soon as possible, I guess.
Are you planning on going for top 16, top 64 in the upcoming competitive season?
As high as possible. As high
Nice.
as possible. As high as, yeah, yeah, as high as I can, basically.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's
Forward to it. Good
always
luck.
nice to see. And we actually briefly talked about that, but considering that the next season is only going to be to to maybe 3 weeks. I think 3 weeks is confirmed now.
Mhm.
Do you think the start of the series should maybe be postponed? Like I've seen some people saying that 3 weeks is not enough. Maybe delay until March.
I mean, that's going to mess with their entire schedule because they've already I think if they're copying the season 2 format, you're going to have the 8 months of competitive seasons followed by opens every 2 months, and then you have the World Masters season 3 in December, right? So I think they're probably not going to delay it an entire month and just compromise and go with a 3-week season. I don't think that's a huge deal. We've had 3-week seasons, we've had 5-week seasons. I think this season is going to be like a 6-week season, the one that we're currently in. So
might be a record.
Yeah, it is going to be a record. It's the highest top 500 cutoff ever. So, and yeah, I think players will adapt. Like, I don't think it's a huge deal to have one 3-week season due to extenuating circumstances. The one thing that I'm most worried about for the current meta is that players will be more rewarded for queuing the right decks at the right time, because the matchups are a little bit more on the binary side. They're not like completely binary, but
Rock, paper, scissors.
If you queue Precision Strike no unit control into Caltulus, when the meta is really Caltulus heavy, you're really happy, or even like Assimilate, and then but if you end up queuing the same deck into like a bunch of Lippies, then you're really sad.
Yeah, understandable. Hester, do we have more questions about the competitive Gwent? Because, as I said, there is not really that much to cover right now.
Yeah, actually, not really, right? And I think that there's still, the finale of season 1 to be squeezed somewhere. So
I mean, if it's happening this year, because we don't know that.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Vlad didn't say there is a deadline on that. Like, he said that they are gonna try to fit it in as soon as possible, as soon as the lockdown is lifted, or as soon as the situation across
I
Europe
remember
or around the world improves.
Yeah.
But if they
I
can
remember
do it, they'll
people
do it
saying-
online too, right? That was the idea.
Yeah, exactly. They want to do this online as well, so I think it should be possible to do it this year as well.
Yeah, I mean, World Masters Season 2 was overall went pretty smoothly online, so I think that probably was like an encouragement for him to consider doing Season 1 online as well. So we'll see. I do hope that they hold it sooner rather than later, because it's gonna get awkward at when like half the players don't come because they're not playing Gwent anymore,
Yeah.
So like the sooner the better, in my opinion.
I think what he said was, because we made a joke about the season 3 finale happening before season 1, and he said it's definitely not gonna be the case, so it has to be this year.
Yeah.
And if we don't have any more questions in that regard, we can move to the fun segment of personal Q&A, and we get to ask Shinmiri some personal questions.
Okay.
And the first one is, how did you actually get to be Skellige Faction Ambassador, and what are your responsibilities as such? Like, what does it include to be an ambassador?
So I think originally I got offered Skellige Faction Ambassador because I was known for playing a lot of Skellige, and it's what was my favorite faction for a long time. In beta, I was I came to fame playing a veterans deck in SK, and then I've always really liked SK as a faction. I really enjoyed like playing early versions of Lippy back when it wasn't that popular, and also Iced with like the old Saris, kind of when Saris was like Crow Mother in that form. I really enjoyed playing that sort of deck. And Faction Ambassador, the biggest responsibilities originally was to come up with a revamped starter deck. Because the original starter decks in Homecoming were very suboptimal, I'd say, and they didn't feel like you didn't feel like you had any chance of winning if you had a starter deck versus somebody who didn't play a starter deck. And they wanted to bring that a little bit closer in line with somewhat viable decks, so that you didn't feel like you were at a massive disadvantage, but also give the players room to grow and to improve their starter decks as they opened new card kegs and got better cards. So that was a big responsibility at the time. And then also just representing the faction And nowadays it's more of being an extra liaison or giving feedback to the developers regarding balance changes or design ideas. And so we have the faction ambassadors have a closer line of contact to the devs, and we give them feedback on future changes and stuff too. So I really like that part.
To your own faction or to all factions?
Not only your own faction, but I guess it's more like what you're comfortable with. I think some of the faction ambassadors do focus on their faction specifically, but I like to give feedback on everything, and I think they take that into account. So it's really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome because sometimes you hear some criticism about faction ambassadors being nothing else but a badge for it. But it's good to hear that there is a line of communication and that you have some influence on the development process or balance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of the competitive part of your job at Gwent as well, you had a chance to be both a caster and an analyst. And how do you prepare for each of these roles? And which one do you prefer? It's I wanted to point out that you've been doing a really good job, and some people are getting roasted from time to time. But you actually, I've never seen some proper roast of you doing your job comparing to the other guys. Well, maybe Panda is not getting that much either, but
I really enjoy being a caster and analyst, and yeah, I feel like I've been lucky, relatively lucky compared to the other broadcasters in terms of like the feedback that I've gotten, and so I really appreciate that. Yeah, I love being both a caster and analyst. They're very different. Actually, I have similar preparation for both of them, and that's just like evaluating the meta and looking at the competitive tournament decks and personally playing through the matchups and looking for interesting, unique interactions or strategies and tactics that both players can use, so that I'm prepared to point them out as the games unfold if the situation does arise. And I also like to interview the players beforehand to get their thought process on their deck lineup, what their strategy going to the matchup is going to be, like their queue orders, and what's going on through their head, because I like presenting that sort of inside information to the viewers. I think that's a cool thing that they get to see if we find anything interesting from the player interviews. And so obviously the differences between a caster and analyst. Casters talking a lot more. They have a lot more screen time, but they also get to take breaks because you only cast half of the matches, whereas an analyst is going to have less screen time, but as an analyst you have to pay attention the entire time. You don't get any breaks. And last time I was an analyst for Gwent World Masters 2, it was just me without a partner, so there's like a little bit more additional pressure that you have nobody to rely on or to throw to in case you're out of things to talk about. So and as an analyst, I think it's a harder job because you have to find more interesting things to talk about, whereas caster, you can fall back on just being more play-by-play and explaining what's happening as it happens. But analyst, you have to I had to find interesting clips myself, record them, set up like the replay as well. So there's definitely some more technical responsibilities too as an analyst, and keeping things interesting while not being too complicated, so that like viewers of all different skill levels and experience levels can understand what you're talking about. Is definitely sometimes a challenge, but I really enjoy both. I'd say if you have to make me choose between one of the roles, I'd probably say caster, but I really enjoy doing it.
Yeah, you actually answered my follow-up question because I was really wondering how it works on the back end side of the job, especially now that everything happens online. Because I always imagine that if you want a clip, you just go to some production guy and say this timestamp, this is what I need. Now you just explain that you have to do it yourself.
It used to be like that. So the first time I was an analyst at Challenger number 4. That was how it was set up. It was like I was on a headset with production guy, and when I saw a clip, I would tell him, okay, from here to here, and then play this clip when we say these keywords. You know, when we say, let's take a look at game number 3 or whatever, and then they would play this associated clip. And then starting from Challenger 5 and also for the online tournament, the analysts themselves got to clip the replay, the segment. So it's I think it's good and bad. Like we get more control over what we want to show, which is great, but it's another thing that we have to be responsible for while also still paying attention to the game. Because like when I'm clipping the replay, the game's still going on. I still have to watch the game and pay attention and make sure I don't miss anything. So yeah, it's a little bit of juggling, multitasking.
And just to be sure, it's not a Twitch clip. Like, you have some proper tools to make that clip, right?
It's not a Twitch clip, no.
Just to be sure.
Yeah, no. I mean, you guys saw the World Masters replay system. I thought it went pretty well. It did, smooth.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, on a side note, I know why Hesser asked about you potentially getting roasted. He asked because he's always getting roasted. Every single tournament, whenever there's a Chinese player, it's like, who is this interpreter? He's doing a terrible job.
They're unfairly hard on Hester. I speak a decent amount of Chinese, and I think Hester has done a really good job. Especially I think in the last tournament, I remember, or in the last 2 tournaments maybe, I felt like there were no major mistakes, and I understood felt like the translations were pretty accurate. So for one native Chinese speaker, I hope that is a little bit more reassuring.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, that's the only props you're gonna get, man. You can make it a quote and hang it above that couch.
I don't know. The players are pretty satisfied with my work as well. So
yeah, exactly. That's what
this is the most important part.
As long as the players are happy with your work, there's no problem whatsoever. Like, you are doing a good job. That's another quote for you.
Back in the days when we were able to go outside, right, and have a on-set tournament, then that was a bit more than just translating, right? I was just, basically walking them around the city, helping them get some food and stuff like that. It's not that anymore, but it used to be not only translating, right, and preparing the clips.
Yeah, hopefully it is gonna be like that at some point in the near future.
Oh yeah.
I think we all wanna just go back to our normal lives.
We all miss that.
Yeah.
I think this is gonna be the last question because we are approaching the 2-hour mark. I'm not sure how you're gonna feel about that, but we have to ask. So, you've been widely known, Shinmiri, as somebody who has a very analytical approach that leads to roping. Did it bother you early on that people were like just accusing you of being a roper?
No, it never really bothered me. I actually took it more as a compliment. Like, I think it's a good thing to take your time to think about your plays and look forward, look ahead, and try to plan ahead for the rest of the match. I think it's important. I think it's one of the reasons why I am as strong of a player as I am. So yeah, I don't like the negative connotation that it comes with. Because when people accuse someone of being a roper, it's often like implied that they don't have anything better to do, that they're not really like using the time to think, and they're just roping for the sake of annoying you, and which is never the case for me. But I'm happy to have a reputation for being analytical and taking my time to think out my plays.
And you actually embraced that roping connotation, like that roping link, because whenever somebody subs, you thank them for roping for this long.
for joining the rope club, yeah, and I don't say that, but maybe I should, like, roping for 20 months if they're a 20-month resub or something like that.
Hesser, do we have any other questions from chat?
Yeah, we actually have one question about the draft. We can take it up. So the question was, do you think that they will continue to do some draft balancing alongside every major real patch? Are there going to be some changes? I still wish there was going to be some sort of competitive side of draft, but it's probably in vain. What do you think about it?
Yeah, draft, I think they will continue upkeeping the draft mode. as they introduce new cards. I mean, we saw that, right? Like they released the draft mode, and then after they released the draft mode with Way of the Witcher, there were draft changes and there were like updates to the packages that you can potentially draft, and I imagine they'll keep up with that. And as for a competitive draft mode, I think with drafts still being technically in beta, they might be waiting for a more stable version before thinking about that. I don't know if they have that in their plans, but it would be kind of cool to see. When I played Hearthstone, I was like almost exclusively an arena player in Hearthstone, and I like the fact that they didn't really have much competitive leaderboards or anything for arena mode until later. But I think that would be cool. I think that would be cool as like an incentive for people who enjoy draft to play more and see how well they can do.
All right. So if that was the last question, I think it's time for the shameless self-promotion. So before we get there, Shinmiri, thanks for accepting our invite. Thanks for being on the episode, and thanks for your insights. And now it's your time to shamelessly promote your own content and your own stream and your own social media. So go ahead.
Well, thank you very much, first of all, for having me again. It was a pleasure. It was fun talking to you guys. And I stream on Twitch. My channel is Shinmiri2, number 2 at the end. And as well as the same username on Twitter, if you want to follow me there. I usually stream on Twitch weekdays starting around 7 or 8 p.m. CET. And I mainly stream Gwent, but I've also, like I mentioned at the start of the podcast, that we're going to be starting a variety game. We're going to be starting Dark Souls 3 pretty soon, in addition to playing some Gwent. And occasionally at night, I'll play some Apex Legends as well. I don't know if I might not be super friendly for a lot of you European viewers, but I really enjoy Apex as well. So it's a fun time. So come hang out whenever you like.
Right on. Villa, and before I allow you to talk, guys, I have to say this has been the most we squeezed out of Villa like ever. He's never talked this much on this podcast. Really appreciate it, man. So now go ahead, promote yourself.
Okay, so how would I do this time? I stream very consistently.
About once a month.
So I would appreciate it if you go over to twitch.tv/VillaKSK and you would follow and then hopefully subscribe. I'm a poor man and I need the money. You can also follow me on Twitter with the same name. Hopefully I'll get your support on my adventures from pleb to hopefully a Gwent World Master.
All right. And now, Hesser.
Yep, would be awesome, guys, if you followed me at twitch.com/Hesser Tavern. You can find me as well on Twitter. Always happy to talk about Gwent and other games as well. Posting some regular content there, info, and all the news about Gwent, Cyberpunk related stuff, and some news generally about gaming. So yeah, I'll see you there.
Alrighty, I'm not gonna promote myself because you are already on my channel, we smart. So I'm only gonna remind you that this episode is going to be uploaded on to variety of other platforms like YouTube, Spotify, either tomorrow or Sunday, and that you can follow us on Twitter if you want to stay in touch off stream. And with that being said, Shinmiri, Villa, Hesser, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for answering all the questions and providing us with your insights and chat. Thanks for being here with us. Thanks for asking questions and just chatting about Gwent. We'll see you guys next time. So once again, thanks everyone and see you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, guys. See you.